A black man saves twins, but what happens 2 decades later shocks everyone. In Compton, Los Angeles, on a rainy night in 2004, James, a 30-year-old black man and Gulf War veteran, finds himself in a situation that will change his fate and that of 2 children forever. When a gang invades the home of Angela, a young single mother, James, driven by a protective impulse, risks his own life to save the 2-year-old twins, Michael and Maya. He cannot save their mother, but the pain of war is replaced by a new purpose: to protect the little ones. 2 decades later, the twins have grown up, but their lives have taken opposite paths. Michael, consumed by anger and the quest for justice for his mother, becomes involved with gangs, while Maya dedicates herself to her studies and dreams of becoming a civil rights attorney. The tension between them is palpable, marked by love and disagreements. The weight of the past haunts them, and James's sacrifice becomes a burden that both must carry in different ways. In the present, everyone's lives tragically intertwine in an ambush. Michael finds himself in a drug deal that ends in gunfire, and James, upon learning of the situation, tries to intervene. Maya, always the rational one, uses her legal skills to prevent the worst. However, fate is cruel. A stray bullet hits James, who dies in the arms of his adopted children. This devastating event not only shakes the siblings, but also reveals dark secrets that will change their perception of love, loyalty, and truth. The impact of James's death forces Michael to reevaluate his life and his relationship with the father figure who so generously saved him. Maya, in turn, faces a devastating truth about her mother, Angela, which forces her to confront the idealization she always had of her. This emotional journey challenges them not only to reconnect as siblings, but also to face the harsh reality of their choices and the legacy left by James. As the story unfolds, the reader is led to reflect on issues of identity, sacrifice, and the complexity of family relationships. What does it really mean to be saved? And how far does love go when confronted with truths that can crumble everything we believe? This powerful narrative promises to touch the hearts of all who read it while exploring the resilience of the human spirit in the face of tragedy. Michael moved through the streets of Compton as if he were in a battlefield. The adrenaline pulsed through his veins as he headed to the corner where he had arranged to meet his contact. The sounds of the city were a symphony of laughter, music, and occasionally the distant echo of sirens. For him, all of this was part of the life he had chosen, a life that took him far from any memory of the safety James had once provided. Anger boiled inside him, fueled by the pain of losing his mother, and he felt more determined than ever to seek justice, even if it meant getting involved in dangerous activities. Maya, on the other hand, was in a completely different world. Sitting at her study desk, surrounded by books and notes, she focused on her upcoming law exam. The soft light of the lamp illuminated her face, reflecting the determination that drove her. For her, justice was not a matter of revenge, but of truth. She dreamed of defending the innocent and exposing the injustices that permeated society. However, the pressure of academic life and the constant worry for Michael tormented her. The relationship between the siblings had deteriorated over the years, and every time she thought of her brother, her heart tightened. She wanted to save him, but she didn't know how. Meanwhile, James, now an older man, felt the weight of the years. He watched the twins grow up, proud of Maya and worried about Michael. The darkness surrounding his adopted son left him distressed. He often sat in his rocking chair, reminiscing about the fateful night he saved the children. That decision still haunted him, like a distant echo that wouldn't let him rest. He wanted Michael to understand that true strength lay not in seeking revenge, but in finding a path to peace. The day of the ambush began like any other. Michael, impetuous and full of confidence, was preparing for the deal. In his mind, he was about to make a big play that would earn him respect within the gang. He wasn't thinking about the consequences, only the possibility of gaining power and finally doing something that honored his mother's memory. The thrill of the moment blinded him to the dangers surrounding him. The rival gang was no joke, and he was about to cross a line that could change everything. On the other side of town, Maya was preparing for an important presentation at college. She felt nervous, but determined. In her mind, the bright future she could have was unfolding, a future where she could make a difference. However, a part of her couldn't stop thinking about Michael. She knew he was getting involved in something dangerous, something that could destroy the life they both were trying to build. Her heart tightened at the thought of what could happen if he couldn't escape that life. On that same day, James felt a sense of foreboding. Something was not right. and he couldn't shake the feeling that tragedy was about to strike. He decided he needed to check on Michael and Maya, even if it meant disrupting his peaceful routine. The protective instinct that had guided him that rainy night in 2004 still lingered, and he couldn't stand by while the twins faced their own demons. When everyone's paths crossed that fateful night, tension filled the air. Gunfire erupted like lightning, and chaos ensued. James, hearing the gunshots, ran towards the noise, his heart racing, fearing what he might find. He was confronted with the horrific scene of Michael on the ground, surrounded by members of the rival gang. The instinct to protect took over him once again, and he threw himself into the midst of the chaos, trying to save the boy he considered his son. But reality was cruel. Desperation and confusion led to a tragedy that no one could foresee. A stray bullet hit James and he fell, his life draining from his body as the twins watched helpless. In that moment, everyone's lives changed forever. Michael, consumed by guilt and pain, began to question his choices, while Maya faced the harsh truth about James's sacrifice and what it meant for her own life. The impact of James's death not only left a hole in their hearts, but also forced them to confront their fears, their failures, and their expectations. Michael, seeking revenge, and Maya, struggling to hold on to her ideals, realized that the path ahead would not be easy. The journey of overcoming and self-discovery had begun, and the only certainty they had was that they needed to unite, even if their differences seemed insurmountable. After the tragedy that marked Michael and Maya's lives, the world around them seemed to have lost its color. Michael was consumed by guilt and anger. James's death was not just a loss. It was a constant reminder of his wrong choices. He felt like a soldier who had failed to protect his commander, and that failure haunted him day and night. The idea of revenge pulsed in his mind, but each thought of violence was accompanied by the image of the man James had been, a father, a protector, a beacon in the darkness. Maya, on her part, faced an internal storm. The pain of losing James ran deep, but there was something more. She felt responsible for Michael, as if she had failed to protect him from himself. The pressure from college became unbearable. Her grades began to drop, and arguments with classmates who didn't understand her situation became frequent. Every time a friend questioned her dedication, a new wound opened in her heart. How could she focus on studying law when her life was falling apart? Michael's quest for revenge led him to a new confrontation with the rival gang. He was determined to avenge James's death, believing it would make him stronger, more respected. However, each attempt to infiltrate his old life left him more isolated. He began to drift away from Maya, who desperately tried to reach out to him. Conversations that were once deep became tense and laden with resentment. Michael didn't want to hear her advice. He was trapped in a cycle of anger and despair. The first major confrontation occurred in an alley, where Michael found himself face to face with the gang members who had threatened his family. His heart raced, and adrenaline surged through him. But when the situation exploded into violence, he realized he was unprepared for the consequences. In the midst of the fight, he was hit, not physically, but emotionally, as he witnessed the brutality unfolding before his eyes. The sight of a young man like him falling to the ground made him question if this was really what he wanted. Maya, on the other hand, decided she could no longer stand by. She remembered the lessons James had always taught her about justice and courage. With a heavy heart, she decided she needed to take action. She joined a support group that helped young people distance themselves from gangs. The group was not just a refuge. It was a place where experiences were shared, and the pain of others was understood. The emotional support she found there helped her realize that, while fighting for Michael, she also needed to take care of herself. Weeks passed, and the tension between the siblings grew. Michael didn't want to hear about Maya's efforts to help him. He felt betrayed by her, as if she were trying to pull him away from his path of revenge. The emotional distance between them became increasingly unbearable, and in a moment of rage, Michael shouted that she didn't understand anything about what he was going through. The words cut Maya like a knife. She felt powerless, as if she couldn't help the brother she loved so much. Michael's life began to spiral into a cycle of failures. Every attempt at revenge ended in disappointment. He couldn't get close to the rival gang, and frustration mounted. With each passing day, he found himself more trapped in a dead-end maze, and as the weight of his choices accumulated, he began to question what it truly meant to be strong. The physical strength he sought felt increasingly empty, an echo of an ideal that was not materializing. Meanwhile, the support group Maya had joined started to bear fruit. She made unexpected friendships with people facing similar struggles. One of the members, a young man named Carlos, became a close friend. Carlos had lost a brother to gang violence and thus understood Maya's pain. Together, they began to plan a campaign to raise awareness among young people about the dangers of street life. Maya realized that if she wanted to save Michael, she needed to create a support network around him, not just for him, but for all the young people on the margins. Tension continued to grow, and Michael, in an unexpected twist, found himself in a more dangerous situation than he had ever imagined. He ended up in a dead-end alley, surrounded by members of the rival gang, in a moment that could end in tragedy. And as fear took over him, he remembered James, his words about courage and love. At that moment, the choice became clear. He could continue down this path of self-destruction or let go of revenge and seek a different way. Before we continue with this thrilling story, take a moment to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any stories. And let us know which city you're watching this video from in the comments. The twists were just beginning, and the real battle was about to unfold, not only in the streets, but within each of them. That night, the moon was high in the sky, illuminating the alley where Michael found himself. The air was heavy and the silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of approaching footsteps. He knew he was in trouble, surrounded by familiar faces that now seemed strange and threatening. His heart raced, and the anger that had guided him up to that moment was now turning into a cold fear. He didn't want to end up like James. He didn't want his story to end there. The members of the rival gang surrounded him, laughing and making jokes about his attempt at revenge. Michael felt a wave of despair wash over him. He was alone, and the idea of revenge that had motivated him now felt like an illusion. Memories of James flooded his mind. The laughter, the advice, the protection he had always offered. The image of his older brother falling to violence made him realize how empty and dangerous that path truly was. As the group closed in, Michael saw a metallic glint in one of their hands. It was a knife. A chill ran down his spine. He didn't want to fight, but the pressure of the moment pushed him toward violence. The fear of being seen as weak, of being a coward, threatened to swallow everything he was. However, as the group prepared to attack him, something inside him began to change. He remembered what James always said. True strength lies in facing challenges with courage, but without losing one's humanity. In that instant, as adrenaline surged through his veins, an unexpected revelation shook Michael. He didn't want to be a man who solved everything through violence. He wanted to be a man who honored James's memory, who made choices that reflected the love and protection he had always received. He realized that revenge wouldn't bring James back, only more pain and suffering. Suddenly, the situation intensified. One of the gang members lunged forward, and in a moment of impulse, Michael raised his hands not to attack, but to surrender. "Enough! This isn't what I want." The declaration echoed in the alley, and a momentary silence followed. Michael felt tears welling up in his eyes, the anger dissolving into a sea of sadness and regret. He was tired of fighting, tired of carrying the weight of guilt. The emotional impact was overwhelming. He found himself confronting his own failures, realizing that he had allowed himself to be led down a path that wasn't his, that life didn't define him. What truly mattered was James's memory, the kindness he represented, and the responsibility Michael felt for his own life. He no longer wanted to be a soldier in a senseless war. He wanted to be a brother, a friend, someone who fought for good. The gang members, surprised by Michael's reaction, hesitated. His courage to back down instead of attacking left a mark. One of the older men in the group, who had seen many young people lost in a cycle of violence, began to reflect on what was happening. "You are stronger than you think, kid. This isn't weakness, it's courage." The words struck him like lightning, and Michael realized that even amid darkness there was still hope. With the tension in the air, Michael turned and ran. He felt that at that moment, he had made a decision that would change his life. Instead of seeking revenge, he wanted to find peace. He wanted to find Maya and apologize, to explain that he was wrong to distance himself from her, that he needed her now, more than ever. What he had considered a weakness was now transforming into a new strength. When he arrived home, Maya's room light was on. He hesitated for a second, but the need for reconciliation pushed him inside. Upon opening the door, he saw Maya sitting on the bed, her eyes red from crying. When she saw him, a mix of relief and worry crossed her face. "Michael, where have you been? I was so worried." She began to speak, but he interrupted her. "I'm sorry, Maya. I didn't want to push you away. I was so lost in my pain that I didn't see what I was doing to you. I don't want this life anymore." Michael's words were sincere, and the emotion that came through in his voice touched Maya's heart. She moved closer and hugged him, both crying together. It was a moment of overcoming and new beginnings, where love and pain intertwined, and the certainty that together they could find a new path. In that instant, Michael realized that true strength wasn't in seeking revenge, but in allowing himself to love and be loved. He had faced his failures, and in doing so, found a new perspective on life. The journey would still be difficult, but now, with Maya by his side, there was hope. Michael sat on the bed, still embracing Maya, as tears streamed down his face. He felt a mix of relief and pain, as if he had lifted a tremendous weight off his shoulders. But at the same time, the reality of what he had faced that night began to settle in his mind. The decision not to seek revenge was just the first step in a long journey of self-discovery and healing. Maya looked at him, her eyes still red, but now lit by a spark of hope. "Do you really want to change, Michael?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with concern. "Life won't be easy. You know this gang won't just leave you alone, right?" He nodded, feeling the weight of truth in his words. The threats wouldn't disappear overnight. In fact, they could intensify. Michael knew that his decision not to seek revenge could be seen as weakness, and that could put him in danger. But at the same time, he also understood that true strength lay in resisting violence. "I want to change, Maya. I want to be better for myself and for you." In the following days, Michael tried to distance himself from the past that haunted him. He dedicated himself to helping at home, spending more time with his mother, who had been so worried about him. Each of her smiles became a small reason for him to continue his internal struggle. However, the pressure from the rival gang was constant. Michael felt the threatening glances as he walked through the streets, and anxiety consumed him. The feeling of being hunted was not easy to bear. One night, while walking home, he sensed that a group was following him. His heart raced and he remembered Maya's words. "Take care of yourself, Michael. Don't let fear consume you." With that in mind, he decided not to run. He turned to face the direction of the footsteps, staring down the familiar faces that surrounded him. "Hey, Michael, what's up? Have you put aside your bravery?" One of the gang members mocked, his disdainful tone echoing in the air. Michael took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. He knew he needed to show that he was no longer the same boy seeking revenge. "I'm not here to fight. I want to move on." Michael's response surprised them all. Their hesitation was visible, and he realized that the change in his approach could have an effect. One of the young men, who always provoked him, looked at him with a mix of anger and confusion. "You're not one of them anymore, are you? What do you think you'll achieve by surrendering?" "I'm not surrendering. I have just decided that I want something better for myself," Michael replied firmly. The silence that followed was heavy, but he felt a new strength within him. This wasn't the life he wanted. He turned and began to walk away, even knowing the group could attack him at any moment. But to his surprise, they didn't follow. In the days that followed, Michael began to open up to Maya about his fears. In long and honest conversations, he told her about the threats that still haunted him. "I don't know what I'll do if they decide to attack me," he admitted, his voice trembling slightly. Maya took his hand, her presence comforting. "You're not alone, Michael. We can face this together. Let's seek help." They decided to gather with a few trusted friends, people who could support them. Over the weeks, their friendship grew stronger. Together, they began to devise a plan for Michael to stay safe. He learned to handle the situation more intelligently, avoiding direct confrontations and seeking support instead of acting impulsively. But as he tried to build a new life, the shadows of the past still pursued him. One night, while at school, he spotted a group from the rival gang on the corner. Panic swept over him, and he remembered how he had felt before. But instead of running, he focused on what he had learned. He took a deep breath and resolved not to let fear take over. Michael was no longer alone. With Maya by his side and friends who believed in him, he began to see things differently. Each day was a new opportunity to distance himself from violence, and he knew the journey would be long. But looking to the future, he felt that he had finally found a path that honored James's memory, not through revenge, but through love and peace. Michael's internal struggle was not over, but he was determined to move forward, to become the person he had always wanted to be. With each step, he distanced himself from the past and moved closer to a future where hope and kindness could flourish. Michael sat in the classroom, watching his classmates interact with enthusiasm. The atmosphere was vibrant, but he felt a weight in his chest. The rival gang still cast a constant shadow over his life, and the furtive glances he received reminded him of his dark days. But this time there was something different. He was determined not to let fear control him. With the support of Maya and his new friends, Michael began to open up more. He realized he didn't have to face everything alone. Each heartfelt conversation with Maya helped him understand that it was normal to feel fear, but it was also possible to overcome it. Once, while walking through the park, she said, "You're stronger than you think, Michael. Every challenge you face is an opportunity to grow." Those words echoed in his mind. He began to realize that every time he chose not to react with violence, he was winning an internal battle. Each day, he grew more confident in his decisions. The path to overcoming was not easy, but he was learning to trust himself. With each step he took, he felt a little lighter. On a particularly difficult day, Michael ran into an old childhood friend, Lucas, a boy who had distanced himself because of the gang. They sat on a bench and began to talk. Lucas said, "I remember how you were. Always fighting, always wanting to be the best. Now I see that you are changing. That's incredible." Those words touched Michael's heart. He realized that even amidst chaos, his actions were inspiring others. However, the fight against his internal demons was still not over. One night, while reviewing his school notes, a message arrived on his phone. It was a threat from the gang. Panic surged over him once again. Michael closed his eyes, remembering Maya's words, "Don't let fear consume you." He took a deep breath and decided he would not let that paralyze him. He needed a plan. He gathered his friends for an honest conversation. Everyone was willing to help. Together, they devised strategies to deal with the gang. Michael learned the importance of protecting himself, not just physically but emotionally. He realized that true success was not in being feared, but in being respected and loved for who he truly was. Over time, Michael began to find small victories in his daily life. He dedicated himself more to school and started to excel in some subjects. What had once been a way to escape reality was now becoming a passion. He recognized that wealth was not just in money, but in the knowledge and relationships he built along the way. His friendship with Maya grew even stronger. They began to share dreams and fears, and Michael saw in her presence a light guiding him away from darkness. In a moment of vulnerability, he confessed that he never thought he could be happy again. She showed him that it was possible to start over. Maya smiled, holding his hand, assuring him that they were in this together, always. With each challenge he faced, Michael also became wiser. He reflected on the lessons life had taught him. He learned that true strength comes from the ability to rise after a fall. He understood that life is made of choices, and that he had the power to shape his own destiny. It was a new understanding that changed his worldview. He didn't have to be a product of the environment he grew up in. He could be the author of his own story. Deep in his heart, Michael knew that the past still haunted him, but now he had tools to deal with it. He began to apply the lessons he learned in his daily life. Each act of kindness, each moment of empathy he shared with others, helped heal his internal wounds. Over time, Michael realized that his friendships were a source of strength. The connection with his friends, Maya's loyalty, and his reconciliation with Lucas formed a new support network. Together they faced the challenges of the world, and Michael became an example of overcoming adversity for many. He looked to the future with hope, knowing that the journey wouldn't end there. Instead of fearing what was to come, he was ready to embrace every new opportunity for growth. Michael had learned that even in the darkest storms, it is possible to find a ray of light. And so, he continued his journey, determined to be the best version of himself, not just for himself, but for everyone around him. The tension hung in the air like a thick fog. Michael sat on a park bench, heart racing. He knew that night would be decisive. The rival gang had called a meeting and he couldn't hide forever. Maya by his side held his hand firmly, transmitting some of her courage. Lucas and the other friends were there too, ready to support him. "You are not alone, Michael," Maya said, looking into his eyes. "Remember what we learned together. You are stronger than you think." These words echoed in Michael's mind as he watched the gang members arrive. He recalled his past experiences, the nights when he felt powerless, but now it was different. He had prepared for this moment. There was no more room for fear in his life. As the gang members approached, Michael stood up. He realized he was no longer just fighting for himself, but for all who believed in him. He took a deep breath and with a firm voice said that they were there to talk, not to fight. "What do you want from me?" The gang members' faces were hardened, but Michael remained steadfast. He knew that violence was not the answer. Instead, he chose to try dialogue. He spoke about his dreams, about how he wanted to change his life and the lives of those around him. He asked for a chance, not just for himself, but for all the young people who felt lost, just as he once did. One of the gang leaders, a boy named Ruan, looked at Michael with disdain. "Do you think you can change anything? You are just another one who wants to be strong, but deep down you are weak," he said defiantly. Michael felt a chill in his stomach, but did not back down. "You may think that, but true weakness is choosing the path of violence. I don't want that for myself anymore. I don't want anyone to suffer because of senseless fights." The words flowed from his heart, and he realized he was speaking sincerely. Ruan hesitated. Around him, some gang members began to exchange glances, as if questioning this approach. Michael seized the opportunity and continued that they all had their demons. "I fought against mine, and now I am here, standing, trying to do something different. And what if we could do this together?" Ruan's internal struggle was evident. Michael saw that his anger was mixed with insecurity. He decided to step forward, extending his hand. "Let's put an end to this rivalry. We can come together and help each other. Life is too short to be trapped in this cycle of hate." Michael's friends, who had been watching in silence, began to support his speech. Lucas positioned himself beside him, affirming that they all deserved a second chance. "What do you think about trying a new path where we can grow together?" The atmosphere began to change. The tension started to dissipate, and Michael felt a thread of hope. He saw some of the gang's faces soften. Ruan, still skeptical, looked around as if pondering the words he had just heard. The internal struggle was evident in his eyes. "What if this is just a trap?" Ruan asked, his voice lower. Michael realized that doubt was creeping in among them. "If you don't try, you'll never know," Michael replied, his voice filled with conviction. "I'm not here to fight. I'm here to build, to change." A heavy silence hung over the group. Finally, Ruan took a deep breath, and with a slight nod, he stepped forward. "All right, let's try, but if this doesn't work, I won't hesitate to fight." Michael felt a weight lift off his shoulders. What had once seemed like an impending confrontation now transformed into an opportunity for reconciliation. He smiled, not just for himself, but for everyone present. From that night on, new possibilities began to emerge. Michael and his friends became a beacon of hope for other young people, showing that overcoming challenges was possible. The friendship that formed in that moment of tension grew stronger, and the connection with Ruan and his gang turned into something unexpected, a partnership in search of a better future. Michael learned that his failures did not define him. They were part of his journey. He realized that true success wasn't about being feared, but about being respected and loved. Looking towards the future, he knew there would still be challenges, but now he was ready to face them, surrounded by friends who genuinely cared. Life is made of choices, and Michael chose light over darkness. He now understood that each step towards love and friendship was a step towards true wealth. The night unfolded in an unexpected calm. Michael and his friends, now allies with Ruan and his gang, sat together in the square illuminated by dim lights that seemed to reflect the new light beginning to shine in their lives. Conversations that were once marked by distrust and hostility now flowed with laughter and shared stories. It was a new beginning, and everyone could feel it. Ruan, still a bit reserved, was gradually opening up. "You know, I thought you were just another kid trying to show off. But now I see that you really believe in what you say," he said, looking at Michael with a curious expression. The sincerity in Ruan's words made Michael smile. "I just wanted all of us to have a chance to be better than we were. Life is hard, but if we don't support each other, it gets even harder," Michael replied, his heart light. He realized that his decision to talk instead of fight was changing not just the course of the night, but the lives of many young people suffering in silence. In the days that followed, the impact of Michael's and Ruan's decision began to spread throughout the community. They organized regular meetings where young people from different groups gathered to discuss their lives, dreams, and challenges. The square, which had once been a battleground, transformed into a space for building and empathy. Michael often remembered Maya's words, "You're not alone," echoed in his mind whenever he felt the pressure of being a leader. He also realized that change didn't happen overnight. There was resistance. There were still those who preferred to maintain rivalry. One day, during a meeting, a young person from a rival gang showed up. "What are you doing here? This isn't going to change anything," he shouted defiantly. Michael felt his heart race, but he remembered what he had learned, to stay calm and be an example. "If you don't try, you'll never know. We're here to show that it's possible to choose different paths," Michael responded calmly, looking into the young man's eyes. He knew it might seem naive, but he was determined not to let anger dominate the situation. Ruan, by his side, nodded in agreement, a gesture that showed they were in this fight together. Over time, the presence of young people from different groups became more common. They started to understand that their stories were more alike than different. Conversations deepened, and friendships began to form. Michael was moved to see other young people opening up about their struggles and hopes. He remembered what he had told Ruan: life is too short to be stuck in this cycle of hate. That was becoming a reality. However, not everything was easy. Michael still struggled with his insecurities. The weight of the responsibility to be an example was heavy. One night he sat down with Maya and Lucas, sharing his concerns. "What if all this collapses? What if I fail them?" he exclaimed, frustration evident in his voice. Maya held his hand again. "You've already done so much. Look at where you've come. Changes don't happen overnight. The important thing is to keep trying. You're a leader, Michael, and your courage inspires us all." Her words calmed his heart a little, but doubts still lingered. It was during one of those meetings, months after his decision, that Michael realized the true impact of his actions. He saw groups of young people coming together to organize a community event, a music and art festival celebrating diversity and friendship. When the festival took place, Michael was moved to see everyone together, laughing and having fun. Ruan was there, playing guitar in one of the performances, and Michael couldn't help but feel proud. "Look at what we managed to do," Ruan said, a wide smile on his face. "I never thought I'd see so many of us together like this." "It's just the beginning," Michael replied, feeling a wave of hope. He knew there would still be challenges ahead, but now he had a support network around him, and more importantly, he had learned that true strength came from unity and understanding. Looking at the square, now pulsing with life and joy, Michael understood that his choices had not only changed his destiny, but also that of many others. He had embraced the light, and in doing so, illuminated the path for others. Life was made up of choices, and he had chosen friendship and love, building a future that once seemed impossible. The transformation that Michael experienced over the months was profound. He went from an insecure young man, struggling to feel like he belonged, to a respected leader in his community. The nights of conversation in the square, initially filled with distrust, became moments of unity and celebration. He not only challenged existing rivalries, but also inspired others to see the beauty in the diversity of their stories. As the music and art festival unfolded, Michael watched with a smile on his face as the square filled with life and energy. The sound of music mingled with laughter and animated conversations, and he felt a warmth in his chest as he realized that he had finally created a space where everyone felt safe and accepted. Ruan, by his side, played the guitar and sang, his presence now a representation of what friendship and understanding could achieve. However, not everything was perfect. The shadows of the past still haunted some. A member of a rival gang, who did not accept the new dynamic, decided to take revenge. He planned an attack during the festival, determined to sow discord and reverse Michael's achievements. As tension began to rise, Michael realized he needed to act quickly. He recalled his own words about the importance of choosing different paths. Gathering his courage, he decided to confront the young man. Instead of responding with anger, he approached calmly, seeking dialogue. He asked what the young man hoped to achieve and what would change if he created more hatred. The young man hesitated, clearly shaken by Michael's determination. During their conversation, the young man began to open up, revealing his frustrations and fears. Michael recognized that he was not so different from this young man. Both were products of a difficult environment, and both longed for a better future. With the conversation, the tension dissipated. The young man, touched by Michael's empathy, chose to step away from violence and join the celebration, participating as a new member of the community. The change was subtle but powerful. Michael realized that his act of courage had not only averted a conflict, but also opened doors to new friendships. As the festival continued, Michael reflected on his growth. He had learned that true strength does not lie in winning battles, but in building bridges. He understood that success was not just about the absence of conflict, but about the ability to create a space where everyone could feel valued and respected. As the night came to an end, the square, illuminated by stars and smiles, became a symbol of what they had achieved together. Michael realized that his journey was not just about him, but about all those who were now part of this movement for change. The story of Michael and Ruan spread throughout the community, inspiring others to follow the same path of understanding and friendship. And this was the true revenge against hatred, to create a legacy of love and unity. Now we invite you to reflect on your own experiences. Have you ever faced moments of conflict that could have been resolved with empathy? Share your stories and thoughts in the comments. Your voice is important and can inspire others to choose the path of understanding as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe so we can continue bringing stories that touch the heart and promote change. Together, we can spread light in a world that often seems dark. The time to act is now.